Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. I'm Cesar Carino, your host, and our guests today, and we have two of them, are Homer and Phyllis Baldwin. Homer, this is a reverse role for you because you always are on the other side of the camera.
That's
you're
right.
Doing the interviewing, or you're doing the shooting, and you probably are the person who started this whole program many, many years ago, and we're going to get into that. And Phyllis, you're here for two reasons. Two reasons exactly. One is to make sure that we can both of us together can control Homer.
I could do that.
You can do that by yourself. You don't need me.
No.
And two, because you have a legacy all of your own, and we're going to get to both of them. But let's start with Homer just for a second here. And tell us who Homer Baldwin is, where you were born, when you were born, who your parents were, and let's go all the way back to your ancestors, who were not only medical people but also state politicians. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, my grandfather, whom I'm named after, the Honorable H.A. Baldwin,
Homer A. Baldwin.
Was
What was
Medina
his
County
middle name?
Representative.
Homer what?
Alden.
Alden. Homer
Yeah.
Alden Baldwin.
Yeah, was Medina County Representative for 2 or 3 terms.
To the state.
Yeah, and
Do you remember those years, Homer?
no, I don't. Grandpa Baldwin died in 1935 of pneumonia, and at that time I was 8 years old, having been born in 27.
27. What day in 27?
What day? June 28th.
June 28th of 1927.
Yeah.
So you are now 70 years old, a little bit, not 71?
I'm looking at 71 saying, hey there.
You're looking at 71 saying, hey there. The rest of the members of the Baldwin family are whom?
Well, my brother Tom,
Who's younger than you?
yeah, 3 years younger. And then I have a sister named Joanne, who's 3 years younger than he is, and a sister named Marcia, who is 3 years younger than Joanne is.
So we have 3, 3, 3, and 3.
I'll tell you.
4 of you all together.
Yes.
Dad and Mom are who?
Rhea Schaefer Baldwin and E. Vance Baldwin. And Dad died in what, 51?
1953.
53. So I can tell you now that it went by E. Vance all of his life because he was named after an old English name. The E stood for Evelyn.
Evelyn.
It looked like Evelyn when
Little
you wrote it
Evelyn,
out.
right.
And that sure didn't fit my old man.
No, it surely didn't fit. And I knew your dad well because he was
Did
in
you?
the garage business.
Yes.
And my brother was in the garage business,
Yes.
and your dad was kind of a mentor to my brother for many,
was
many
he?
years.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yep, he was a mentor to my
I
brother.
really am. Henry was in my class.
That's right.
But I had absolutely no interest in mechanics.
Well, your dad was a good one.
Yeah, I
As a matter of
understood.
fact, he had a station right where the library is right
Yeah,
now.
the high-speed station on
High-speed
Hickok
station.
Oil out of Toledo. He was the first one there.
Right there.
And that's an interesting story.
And we're going to hear about that too.
Okay?
We're going to ask Phyllis now to give a little bit about her background and her, 6 sisters, Phyllis?
I had 5 sisters.
5 sisters. You're the 6th one.
And one sister died.
And 1 sister died. And who are you? You were Phyllis Baldwin now, but you were Phyllis Robinson.
Phyllis Robinson.
When I remember you in school, and I can still remember when you were a senior, you came out in such a demure fashion. You saying, "I'm only a bird in a gilded cage."
Oh, yes, I looked dainty, didn't I?
You look very dainty, very, very nice. Phyllis, tell us about your family and a little bit about your birth and your parentage here in Wadsworth and all of that.
Well, I was born in Wadsworth, although on my birth certificate my dad had written 1 mile east of Wadsworth. That kind of sounds like a grassy field, doesn't it? Actually, it was Hartman Road, known as Gypsy Lane in those days.
Gypsy Lane in those days, that's
And
right.
the house was standing there until just a couple of years ago, until they built that shopping center type thing that
Right.
out there, and that's where I was born.
Right there in the corner. As a matter of fact, there was a big farm there, the Freed Farm was there.
Right. My dad came from Waverly, Ohio, and he didn't meet my mother until he came up to the Columbia Chemical.
And who was your mother?
My mother was Maud Robinson, of course, but her maiden name Well, she came from a Schumacher family, and her maiden name was Snyder.
Snyder, from Barberton?
Barberton.
And the Snyder family is a very prominent family in Barberton. And
Oh, lots and lots of
right.
relatives in Barberton.
now, was she in any way related to the people in Snydertown or in Sherman and
Yes,
Snyder?
some were there.
And what about Snyder Hill?
No.
Not
no.
Snyder Hill. We have other people here in Wadsworth who were related to the people in Snyder Hill.
Oh, really?
Right. And Snyder Hill's in Sherman and Snydertown's there. Going back to Homer now, tell us again, I forgot, you have 5 sisters. Let's hear who they are and where they are.
Okay, my oldest sister, Marilyn Hoagland, is in Boulder, Colorado.
And she's been out there for years and years.
I'm not real sure how long it's been that she's been out there. And then the sister in between Marilyn and I, Laurel, was the one that died when she was 12. And then directly under me is Janice Welch. And then comes Dorothy Ventilla. And then Susie Bickle. And Susie lives in North Dakota.
And the range is from 75 to what?
The age,
Susie is what, about 55?
yeah, I'd say so.
So-
I don't keep track of those things.
Marilyn is about 75 years old.
Yes.
75,
Yes,
yeah, 75
right.
years old, and Susie's, so they're 20-year span
Yes, there is
there.
a 21 years difference.
We do this only for the historical aspect of Wadsworth history. We certainly aren't doing it to find out, how old you are,
Oh,
because we
well,
know
yeah,
exactly how old you are.
That really
Yeah.
worries me.
You were born in 1928, is that
29.
29, and what day?
June 15th.
June 15th. You have very
Yeah.
close birthdays then,
Yeah.
don't you?
Oh, we do.
Very close birthdays.
For maybe 10 days, we're only a year apart. Then bingo, we're 2 years again.
That's the way it is with my wife and me. Where for 6 months we are more than a year, however, apart. We're 9 years apart, and 9 years. Then for 6 months we're 10 years apart. I'm the younger, of course.
Of course.
Why not?
Homer, we need to accelerate the program today because you have so much to tell us. But one of the things that we absolutely have to get on the shelf before we do anything else is to find out how this studio, from which we are presently talking this very moment, how it began, when it began, and who it began. Now, one of the things that you're not going to do is to tell about yourself because you keep on pushing everyone else out into the forefront, and you are always in the hind front. Or is that the right word,
Hind
Phyllis?
front, that's a good
Yes,
one.
right.
that's a very good word.
And
If it
there
isn't a
are
word,
at least
I'll find one.
there are at
Go
least
there.
a dozen people who have told me or have asked me to get you on the program to keep you on task with the questions, because we're going to ask you some questions which are going to make you come out and tell us exactly who you are and what you have done, because no one really realizes how much you have done. First and foremost, tell us, would you please, how you became interested in Wadsworth Television, who was here at the time, and what you did at the very beginning, and then we're going to find out just how much you have done for this television station.
Well, it's a natural when I was 40 years old, I left Wadsworth and went to Brooks School of Photography in Santa Barbara, California. For 6 months, I came home, and I could handle professional cameras, which is what I needed to do. Then I became employed. First one was by WJBK, Channel 2 in Detroit. They dropped me right in the middle of the Detroit riots on the last airplane flying into Detroit because they were shooting at them, and there was nobody else on the airplane but 3 stewardesses and 2 pilots.
Can you imagine that?
That's where my film life started out.
So your film,
It went from there to
you got quite a bit of action.
bribing a National Guard to drive 90 miles an hour from the airport into Detroit with no headlights on because of the curfew.
Oh my heavens! And this
I
was
reported at the station because I think your word is important. They wanted me there at 6 o'clock, and I arrived at the TV station, and 2 fellows were looking up at the big overhead doors that they bring the flats in and out of, and there was a hole in one, and the other was saying, I'm here last night, and I hear this ping, and I look down, and here's a bullet spinning at my feet on the floor.
Oh my heavens!
That was my introduction to the motion picture field. And so for the next many, many years, I followed through on it. It was very natural when the opportunity for television came in to glom onto it and to learn all about this medium. Now, I'd had my own company, and I sold it out because I could see tape was coming in.
What was the name of your
film.
company?
Venture Production.
Venture Productions.
Right.
And we're going to be talking more about your company and what you've done in films, too. So please continue. You're doing quite well. Phyllis is doing well, isn't he?
Okay.
Oh, I'd say he gets an A+.
Okay, you stop him if he doesn't.
Plus. Okay, now how I stay with what I had. Let's see. We had a television company. After we had the film work, I got out of the film work and decided that I needed to fall back and regroup a little bit, which meant that I needed a job. Everybody needs to be needed, but as you get older, you need to be needed more.
That's right. That's one of the big problems that older
Yes.
people have.
So I saw Bill Heil, and he had a job open. I could still shoot movies all day and work down at Central School at night.
Doing
That's
what?
what I did. I was custodian.
Well, it's more than a custodian, though. You were kind of a sage. You were kind of a Plato of the high school.
Well,
I came here night after night after night and asked somebody else to do the sweeping because I wanted to talk with you because you do have so much. You're a Renaissance man of the first water.
well,
And that was something that gave you that opportunity because
Yeah.
hundreds of people came to talk with you.
well,
We still had to clean school, but someone else
I
had to do
didn't.
it.
I didn't think that the high school was being run right, so I ran a Renaissance on it, and that's where we went for 10, 11 years. I felt that every youngster in here, and this included coaches, children, and what have you, there was no difference. I treated them all as human beings, not boys, not girls, human beings, people that the only animal that thinks and feels, a human being.
That's right.
Okay, and so that's why I treated them. And if I had to come down on them like 1,000 a brick, I did. And I don't think they resented it.
No,
Because
no.
everybody got it. There was no special deals. As a matter of fact, I got in a bind a couple times with people who wanted special action taken in their behalf. And after looking into it, I didn't. They used to have problems such as the place was used day and night, and Sundays too. And I made a documentary after the ball. And for 7 months, I photographed every activity up here. And we've got them, you know, every activity, during the day, on the weekends, at night, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, the place was, I used to describe it as a motel, really, because of all the different facilities. You needed food, sometimes we needed places to sleep. In the gym, kids would come in and they'd stay all night or what have you. It all had to be taken care of. And I used to check everything, double check everything. And once in a while I'd find somebody tuned in for the same place. They might be the cafeteria for square dance and something else. Anyhow, I just call them and make arrangements with my crew and transfer them to the commons rather than cut it off. But I stayed on top of it, and everybody got as much of the same treatment as it was possible to give under the circumstances. And I took the flack when I got flack and tried to mediate, because I really didn't feel I made decisions. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I made them anyway. Right or wrong, drunk or sober, I made decisions that maybe should have gone down to administration. They could pot around on them for a while. But that wasn't my style, especially when it needed to be done and now for someone else's good. So
And it
that's
worked
where
well.
the PR for the schools came in. We tried to be as professional as we could. I was not born to the purple. I was a film producer, not a head custodian. But the things I had learned through the years in regard to working with people and what their needs are, things of this nature, it was just logic.
One of the things that those of us who have such regard and respect for you, Homer, would say that you actually infiltrated the school to be a place where you could observe this human nature and to
yes.
record this human nature.
Yeah, I did.
And what better place, because you have, you know, I think that there's a saying that children comprise only 20% of the population, but they are 100% of the future. Those kids whom you filled, are the ones who will be looking at this in the year 2014, and they will be so grateful for your having infiltrated
I hope so.
the school and having done that. We're going to stop with you just for a half a second, and we're going to go to Phyllis here because, and everyone calls you Philly, we're going to go to Phyllis here to have her give a little support to what you just got done saying. During this period of time, you were also working for the school system, but you were a
Yes,
teacher,
yes, I
right?
was. Mhm.
As a matter of fact, you were our youngest child's first grade teacher,
Yes, I remember Jerry
little Jerry,
very
and you
well.
taught him how to read.
I did, but I
as
don't
we-
think I had to work very hard.
Well, I'm not positive because he didn't like to draw, he said, and drawing was reading as far as he was concerned. But you'll be happy to know that as we speak, he is now completing a PhD in medicine at Columbia University.
I'm not surprised.
He has told us time and time again that how much he liked his Mrs. Baldwin.
Well, I'm glad to hear that
But
because
during that period of
that's
time,
mutual.
Phyllis, you were a teacher in several of the schools in Wadsworth, particularly at Isham, where you not, and then you went to other places.
Isham, I was there for 17 years solely. Then in 1982, I took part-time employment and became teaching of art to the handicapped and disabled.
And this is what I wanted to hear you talk about, because you yourself are an artist in your own right. Your husband is an artist in his own right, not only with cameras, but also with the pen, with the stylus, and your whole family, as a matter of fact, and your children are.
And our parents.
And your parents were. So we're talking about a very highly artistic family here.
We're talking about a wild gene running amok.
A wild gene riding amok. But Phyllis, tell us what part you played in this production that Homer started, that film production.
Well, the biggest part I played was holding the family together while he went off to California for 3 months.
And you did that beautifully.
Yes,
Yep.
I did. He took the only car that we had, so we had to walk or call a cab or whatever.
Right, being school teachers and therefore poor, we had only one car, is that correct?
That's right.
And then the family consisted of which three? And this is the perfect time to talk about that family of yours, which is so beautiful.
Our children, yes, they were all there. That
And they were
Jane,
starting
the oldest. Jane was the oldest.
Jane, right,
And then Tom.
Tom,
And then Scott.
Scott,
And then Laurel.
Laurel.
And they're all 4 years apart.
4 years apart, and Tom is presently the owner of, tell us,
Baldwin Studio and Framing at Todd Powers Accent
Yeah,
Gallery.
119 College, I think it is.
117 College
117
Street.
College Street. So we're talking about at least 3 generations of artists and all of that.
At
Now-
least.
At least that many. Now, Homer, going back to you again now, with what this, having invaded the school, having made these documentaries, tell us all of the documentaries that you have made and the way that you have had to make them, and then tell us how we're going to get back to having you tell us about how you became involved and how you got
Right.
this studio started.
Okay, I'm going to bring us down from my office, which was up the hall, down to this place.
Okay.
It's no accident that this is the studio. It was adjacent to my office, and the rooms in between, Bill Beekler, who taught audiovisual, and
Say that name again, we'll spell
Bill Beekler,
B-E-E-K-L-E-R.
Biecchler.
Oh, B-I-E-C-H-L-E-R. Okay,
Yeah.
we need to get that so that we have it
Well,
for posterity.
he was next to my office, and he had the audiovisual into things, which was different in those days. He still had motion picture cameras and projectors. Just getting into tape, a brand new and different operation. Anyway, we built it down here. A young fella by the name of Steve Fry came out.
Spell that
not
name
Steve Fry.
F-R-Y-E or F-R-Y?
David Fry. God help me, he can't
Right.
be Steve Fry.
Steve
he came
Fry
first
is
to
the-
Wadsworth. He's the vice president of Warner now, but David Fry has his own business now.
Right. And Steve Fry is F-R-Y-E, but David Fry is F-R-Y.
That's right.
They are not related.
No, sir.
No. Just by coincidence, they happen to be Fries.
But he was very a great guy to know. Okay, he was
A little bit of a fellow, wasn't
yeah,
Little
up
guy,
against a problem that I didn't
charming.
realize because he had to buffer between Warner's and Wadsworth, and that's when the small brush fires were breaking out. When the big conflagration hit. But
What year was this, Homer?
oh gosh, can you help me, love?
I'm trying to think.
In the 70s?
In the 70s.
I think it's
late,
about-
yeah.
Late 70s?
No, late 60s, maybe
Late
early
60s, early 70s?
Yeah.
Okay. So 25, 30 years ago, somewhere in that area.
Well,
We
no.
were- or is it-
This place has been here 15 years now.
Oh, right, it's the late
Okay,
70s.
and we had
Late
to have
70s?
So that's what it was. It was 15 years ago.
Okay, 15
so
years we've
we're
been.
talking about
Okay.
82, 72.
Yeah, late
like that.
70s.
Okay, anyway, I became acquainted with the equipment, and I'd stay up nights and read this and do that, and then I started shooting, and we were building. You can't believe the shots I've got of the original studio. You just can't believe it.
I'll bet.
And I was on the board, the cable board, and
For the city of Wadsworth.
yes, indeed. And so I used to watch him. I get the iron cart for him and watch him trundle sensitive equipment over these halls, crank, bang, crash on a metal cart, you know, to get to the West Gym, so that they could do a 1 or 2 camera setup over there on a basketball game or whatever was going on, graduation. So finally, we were able to through the meeting get $10,000 cable run across, so it comes right in here at the head end, and it saved $10,000 worth of equipment the first year, because equipment breaks down when you move it.
In other words, there was a somewhat of a symbiotic relationship between the city of Wadsworth and the city schools of
Oh
Wadsworth.
yes, there always has been.
And that's a good thing to
Yep.
have.
Always has been. Nobody makes it alone, and that's very important in that particular case. But for a long time, nobody would take advantage of it. First, they didn't want to study, or if they did, they wanted Dave to do the work for them, and he did. He'd go out and shoot and everything. But it was a case of there was no action up here at all. We had all this promise, the bright promise, and nothing would happen. So I would spend a lot of time shooting this and that, things that moved and things that didn't, so we could start building a program, trying to interest people. Even got Bill Beekler to hold an evening class up in his area on tape and film production. Anything to keep it alive.
Did you have many takers?
Yeah, we had 6 or 7, $25 for a 6-week course.
Wow.
This was in our infancy, but it was real, and so we worked at that. I kept working here too, and we had Dave Fry left, and we got other people in. They just stayed with them in a small way. They were dependent on me in my job as head custodian here to get certain things done. If they needed cameras or setups or this or that, it was all part of the scheduling. And we looked at them just like we looked at a youngster that has a direct need. Everybody that we could, we took care of properly as we knew how. So they needed me, and that was good in its own way. And we just kept building the studio, that's all. This used to be where the athletics equipment was stored. I can see, when I look hard, I can see the racks and racks full of helmets and shoulder guards, and this was Laura Mast's office, right?
Laura Mast had his office here. Now, having worked in schools myself, I know that one of the most difficult things to do is to depose people of their particular space.
Right.
Now, that in itself is bad enough, but deposing an athletic person of his particular
In this
space,
town, anyway.
it takes probably the right hand of God. Now, how on earth did you get this space from the athletic department? Tell me that.
All right. What happened is the athletic department, I'll have to go back further than that, the seniors up here, they had a wild gene running amok too. In fact, it caused the whole senior class to run amok, and they painted up their senior room, which they could go to anytime they wanted to. Did everything to the walls, the ceiling, the furniture, painted everything, the TVs, and just ruined it. Therefore, the seniors no longer had a place to go. What happened is that Laura was growing and he needed more room, so they moved him out of here and put him over across the commons, okay? Now, that left this babe sitting here and high, wide, and handsome, and here's the need for a room.
And you had the personnel to make the change.
Yeah.
So one night you came in here.
No, not one night.
No, it wasn't that quick.
The Fry boy that runs Warner's came in here, and
Steve Fry, F-R-Y-E.
yeah, Steve, and we put this thing into operation. It had old equipment that was almost worn out, and it wasn't dependable. They had one camera, but we were alive and moving. And every time we did something wrong, we learned. An expert is somebody who's made all the mistakes, and we became experts quickly because we did make all the mistakes, but that's how you learn.
That's so true.
So anyway, we got it on the road, and I think it was about 1985 that I got my own camera and started working in addition to the normal things I shot around here. But I've got a history on this school in different ways that you can't believe. I've got the running track out here from the time they dug the first shovel full of dirt up until the girls used, I got the first quarter of the first initial run that they used it out there. And I have upgraded it and re-edited it twice and gave it better music. Music is a language that is vital if you're going to work in this kind of a
And it's music that everyone can understand.
Yes.
Music is to our understanding as to what animal talk is to the world culture of animals. You know, actually language has separated human beings.
It certainly has.
Now, a donkey that is born in Tennessee can go to Russia and speak perfectly to a donkey in Russia. And here we are, highly educated people, and we cannot go from here to another place and speak because of the language. But music is the international language,
Yes, it
the
is.
universal language.
It is.
And, you know, it's good that a person with your background, of course, it's extremely artistic, but it's good with a person with your background would understand that, because anything that you have, whether it's here in Wadsworth High School or in Ethiopia or whatever, there are kids, which of course, they're always the same wherever you go, but the music then brings in the feeling that you want. We're going to stop with you for just a half a second here because we have to find out a little bit about another aspect of Wadsworth history, and that is Hap Robinson. Who was he and what did he do?
Hap Robinson's real name was George Washington Dewey Robinson.
I can see why they
Can
called
you
him
see why
Hap.
they call
George Washington Dewey. Now we have George there from George Washington, and
That's
Dewey,
right. And
Tom
Dewey,
Robinson. Who was he and what did he do?
my dad was foreman at the Columbia Chemical. in
Which at that time was called the what?
Soda ash.
Soda ash, not soda ash, S-O-D-A, but the soda ash.
And the other thing was that where he worked was called the process, not the process.
Right, the process, right.
But the process, and he was the foreman of that department.
And how long did he work at the soda ash before he retired?
He retired after 44 years,
After 44 years, and he's gone now, of course, and
He's
so is your
gone.
mother. But when did your father die?
1975.
And what year was he born?
He was born 1898.
1898. And your mother?
My mother was born in 1902-3,
And
she died in 85.
In 85. That's a part of history that very few people in Wadsworth now can remember. That's the soda ash of Wadsworth.
Yes, I think you'd have to be an old Columbia Chemical
That's right.
person to know that.
And I happened to live next to the person who was the foreman along with your father, and that
who
was
was
Willard
that?
Hollinger.
Oh, sure.
That's Willard Hollinger. And I had known of Hap Robinson from the time that I was born, but I didn't know who he was.
Well, we used to go to Willard's
Yes,
place
indeed
as
you
kids.
did. And I, after Willard sold that place, then we bought the house and the property, and that's where we live now. That's,
Oh, you're living there now?
well, we don't live in the house, we live on the property. We sold the house off and we live in that property. And I think that it's wise for us to remember that so many people in Wadsworth did work at the Columbia Chemical.
Oh, many.
But you might be reading something about the soda ash and not know where the Columbia, that it was part of the Columbia Chemical, which of course is the Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company.
Something you might not know about that.
What is that?
On Gypsy Lane,
Right.
we lived next door to Dwight Means.
Yes.
The big house that burned down. And Dwight later became vice president of PPG.
That is correct.
And he and my dad were born on the same day.
No kidding. Isn't that something?
Isn't that something?
That is something.
And they looked alike.
Is that right?
Yes, they look like almost like
Isn't
twins.
that something? Well, you know,
And then another little thing I'd like to
Let's
throw
have
in
that,
there
please
is
do.
that Dwight paid for my first year of college at Carnegie Mellon
nice. And you went to Carnegie Mellon, and majoring in what?
in art.
In art. And you have been a very successful art person all of your life, and recently, what are you doing with art?
I'm a needlework designer.
But how do you do that? I mean, tell us about
Oh, it's cross stitch, and I work on a drawing board, and I design things, and
And then somebody else comes and puts the little needles
Oh
in.
no, well they do after they get my patterns. Yes.
That's what I'm saying,
Right,
yes. In other words, it's like paint by numbers, except you do the numbers.
Yes, right.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to Homer again for a couple of minutes here, because he still is getting away from what we really wanted to say, and that is that we want to know exactly what labor, what perspiration had to occur for this to begin. Now, we have heard that you were able to get Laurel Mast, who was the athletic director at the time. Wonderful person. His wife, Norma Mast.
Good.
That was a lot of labor.
Oh, that was a lot of labor. We got that out of here. You got Steve Fry, who was not easy to move, I understand. Is that correct?
Right.
Steve Frye over here. You got some new equipment, and at this point, almost no one, as a matter of fact, probably safe to say, Homer, that no one in Wadsworth was doing anything about this, right?
No.
Now, how, and I heard you also say that you were on the Cable Commission. How did that Cable Commission get started? Who started it, and who pushed whom to start it?
It was part of the city, and
How did they start it, and who started it?
Bill Lyron.
Bill Lyron.
Responsible for many things in this city, right or wrong, whether you like it or not. His mind is in the middle, and he really is this city's son.
Indeed, he is. And how did you get associated with Bill on this one?
Well, probably because of my motion picture background, I would say. That it's the same thing, it's just different equipment. But you walk into a place and you get an establishing shot, then you get a close-up, then you run your credits, whatever it takes. You do the same thing with film that you do with tape. That's the one thing I've always tried to push, is the fact that I learned all these, and film's a lot harder to work with. It's physical and mechanical, where this is all electronic, so it made a lot of difference to this old goat. When I got into electronics, I didn't understand them. I had to work harder. If I could just pick that tape up and spliced it, cut it here, and moved it around like you do film, it would have been fine. But I couldn't do it, so.
You know, I've been saying the wrong names. It's Steve Fry, F-R-Y, and David, F-R-Y-E.
Okay.
Right,
Well,
I'm sorry.
I think David is F-R-E-Y, isn't it?
I don't know which
F-R-E-Y?
card
I
with
think
me.
so.
They're spelled.
Thank God they're
Oh,
homonyms.
yes. Thank God they have different first names.
He's F-R-Y-E, I believe, because his company is called Friday Productions.
Oh, is that right?
So that would make sense, F-R-Y-D-A-Y. But that's the name of his company, Friday. Anyhow, where was that?
Well, we're going to tell us about who was on the Cable Commission and
Yeah,
how it got
okay.
started, and
Well,
when.
See if I can remember, because we had a bunch of different people in it for a long time. There was as much apathy there as there was in the producing unit. Okay. I wish I had some old film we could cut away to. It'd be right there for you.
Right there.
Oh yeah.
You were there. Bill Lyron was there.
Yeah.
Who else was there?
Charlie Ackerman.
Charlie Ackerman. That's
Charlie
the
and
name.
I were the oldest people on that board. Okay, I left it a couple, 3 years ago.
Charlie's
Charlie's still on it, so he is the oldest. Okay.
Charlie Ackerman is the editor of the
Right.
Sun Banner Pride now.
Absolutely, yeah. And Jim Leadham was on it.
Okay, we're getting there.
What's his name the other day that his wife waited on us up at Kmart?
Oh, don't.
Jack
Sarver.
Sarver was.
Oh, Jack Sarver, right.
Yeah, he was head of it. Okay, he was the presidente.
Jack Sarver was married to Mickey Sarver.
Mickey, yes.
And let's see. In my mind's eye, I'm going over. There are a couple other fellows that I just don't remember.
Well, if they come up with
Willard Houston was.
Willard Houston,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
a teacher in the Wadsworth Public Schools
yeah.
and the high school, chemistry teacher for years and years, right.
It was pretty good.
Shirley Casey was in there too, somewhere or other.
Shirley was
Shirley
for a while,
Casey.
yeah.
Okay, so we have a lot of people who are still in Wadsworth who are involved with this thing, but you and Charlie were the oldest ones, or the most venerable. We say that in
Yeah.
this state, in this program, because of the age sensitivity. The most venerable ones, but you were the ones that started it.
I really, really wanted to get the word out, you know. I've never gone on a crusade in my life, but I think back on it, I did go on a crusade. I remember I took Charlie and Jim Leadham over to the mall, and I'm going to show them how to shoot. They get an establishing shot, follow this through, this and this, and how it's cut and edited. Well, we went over there, and they looked around, and they shot here and there, and in the end, I edited it. They weren't interested. And I could see then that I had to do this stuff myself. There wasn't any way I was going to be able to pass it on. I didn't have that capability.
How many full-time people did you have in those days in the late 70s? Working?
Just one. Oh, you mean for me up here at the school?
No, I mean for the TV studio.
Oh, TV studio just had Fry.
Just had Fry, and
Yeah.
he was the only one.
Yeah, Dave was the only
Dave
one.
Fry.
And
Now,
Dave worked with me. He taught me a lot of things, and I worked with him trying to make things easier for him when he had school activities to cover.
when did the WCTV, the studio from which we are presently making this tape, when did WCTV begin to blossom, and what role did you play in that? And
Well,
here we're going to have Phyllis prod you because you won't tell us. You're a very vocal person, but you are too humble.
I'm kind of like the paint on the walls. It's just always been here.
You've always been there.
Yeah. I think that it probably started to show promise about 6 years ago. It was about the time I was getting ready to retire. Maybe I'd retired by then?
Yes, you had retired by then.
Okay.
You retired in '89.
As a matter of fact, we're going to go to
89?
Phyllis now and have her tell the story so that she won't leave anything out. Tell us how this thing got started.
Well, I
There we
think
go.
what happened was, I don't know the exact time that the city took it over and all that sort of thing, but I know that he was spending hours.
How many
up
hours a
here.
day?
Oh, he'd come home maybe 3 in the morning.
So having started when?
Oh, early, after school.
11 o'clock.
After
11
his
o'clock.
school duty was
Yeah,
over.
I worked second shift.
He worked second shift, and then he'd stay until 2 or 3 in the morning, many, many, many times.
And he was working here.
Working here.
Working here.
And it was always kind of bad because I couldn't get through the switchboard ever to talk to him because the phones were cut off.
Surely.
And it worried me to have him up here by himself. But the police looked after him. They knew his car. They all had a code number for him so that I knew that they would tell me if anything would happen. And so he spent years up here.
How many
doing
years do you
that.
think, Phyllis, altogether?
Well, I know that he started doing this about in 1985, I think, was when
Yeah.
he started spending so much time
85
up
was
here.
when I did the
And
experiment.
then whenever they hired John and Joanna, or not Joanna, there was someone preceded her, Becky, and different people.
But John
started.
John
here
Madding started.
Always. Mhm.
Now, Homer, you had your hand in that too, didn't you? In making sure that we got some more people to work in the studio.
Yeah, I could work that through the cable commission, okay, and that's why we put a $10,000 line across. So all I had to do is take the cameras over there on their tripods, on dollied wheels, and just plug them in. Everything else was handled over here.
What about the cable that goes down to the board office, the Board of Education office, and also the City Hall?
Okay.
What part did you play in that?
Well, I didn't have a big part in that because it wasn't production. Those are basics. And I think Sarver and Lyer and people who are more in the building stage of things. You know, theirs is a unique sense to look down the road to see what's going to happen to come, or to base it on what is already here and make it move. I can't do that. I have no way of influencing people. All I can do is be influenced myself and put it on tape or film and say, there it is, damn if it isn't. And figure it's the best I could do with what I had to do with. And that's because I'm the sensitive guy. Too bad. Cut me to the quick. 5th grade. I'm always the last one being called for Red Rover. A simple game like that. Last one. This works on me for a while. I grow up. I'm a 100% made in America certified introvert.
An introvert?
Yeah, I carried my
Homer
own,
Baldwin, an introvert?
Oh,
I
yes.
carried my own trash can around. Had the bottom cut out, I'd carry it around. When somebody would look at me or something, I'd pull it down, put the lid on. Yeah, until I was old, like 22, something like that. Then I joined the Footlighters because I suddenly discovered what I was. I didn't know about it till then. And there's no place on center stage for an introvert. And so I didn't go to therapist or anything. I did it myself. I changed it around.
To change it around. You're no longer an introvert.
I don't think so.
No, and you have never been an introvert, have you?
I don't think.
No, absolutely not.
No.
One of the great things about Phyllis Robinson Baldwin, we didn't know that she was going to be a Baldwin at that time in high school, was the fact that she probably had as much power as an in-group person who was a close associate of the in-group, but never used the power of the in-group. The in-group used her power. She loved every person, and she would have loved the guy who was called last for Red Rover. She would
I
have
was
loved that.
too. I wasn't sporty either.
Well, she would have been the last person. She would have been the person to come over and to make you feel good. She did that to the entire school. Phyllis is one person whom the school loved. I don't care who you were, whether you were in the in-group or in the out-group or wherever you were, everyone loved Phyllis Robinson because she was that type of person.
Yeah.
She had lovely sisters who had different personalities from you, didn't they, Phyllis?
I can't believe we're all sisters.
No, as a matter of fact, one of your sisters could have been a nun. She is so sweet and so loving.
Oh, which one is that?
Which name is that?
But you had that quality, and it's good that the two of you got together because there's a compatibility there. Phyllis, we want to ask you a couple of questions about the artwork that you did with the handicapped. I think that's so very vital.
Oh, yes, that was probably the best part of my teaching experience.
And what was that? Tell us about that.
I would go into all the small classrooms where they had the disadvantaged children of whatever kind they were. And I would work really one-on-one with these kids. And they would leave their homeroom teacher and go with me, and I'd have to find spots because there weren't any places in the school for such a thing. And most of the teachers were very, very generous and gave me corners or little rooms or closets or whatever they needed. And for a year, I had money from Title VI, I believe it was.
6?
Yeah, whatever. I'm not real sure about that. But anyway, they gave me a little operating budget, but that only lasted a year. Then after that, it was kind of beg and borrow and
that's what we always have to
save
do
and scrounge. And
for the art.
Our garage was full of bottle caps and plastic doodads and knickknacks and birdseed and pine cones for years. I still can't walk past something and pick it up and put it in a box.
And all of that turns out to be an art form.
Right.
Yeah.
Homer, movies.
Yes, sir.
Tell us the first movie that you made, where it showed, and how many times it showed, and ask me then how many times I watched it.
Well, I don't know if you saw this because as
Maybe it
far as
wasn't
I
the
know,
first
I
one.
got the only copy east of the Mississippi River. It was called Wire in the Wind. When I was out at motion picture school, down the way was a flying field, and it's full of antique aircraft. And I got down there, and what I would do is, I was only 2 blocks from the Pacific, but I never saw it unless I was on location shooting. I was working like the devil. I was up against 19 and 20-year-old kids, and I was 40. I would listen to soundtracks, work on the script, etc. I had recording equipment out there, and so what I did was lay a soundtrack down and voice over and told a story, Wire in the Wind, and then I'd take it out, and here's an airline captain who has this JN4D, a Jenny, that he flies on the weekend or something. He's in there working on it, and I'd talk to him, and I wouldn't interrupt his work. I'd lay this down, and I'd play Wire in the Wind on the tape. And yeah, he'd put his airplane in. I had $300,000 worth of antique aircraft flying for me down there. This was my graduation film. It was in color and sound, which is the most expensive, so it was necessary that more than one person be involved in the thing because of the cost. So a young fellow from Los Angeles became my partner, and then it surprised me, but the teacher became our other partner. He was a flyer and a skydiver and a this and a that, and it went on and on. I met many famous people. Bud Gurney, who flew with Lindbergh, had his airplane there,
We have him in the
Slovak.
movie.
Is that right?
Oh, yes. And we had a big, I wasn't there, but they had a big premiere. And Ernest Gann was there. Now, he wrote Island in the Sky and
High and the Mighty.
yeah, the whole bunch. See, he was a pilot turned author. And he was there. So that was the first one. I've got a videotape of it. I lent the film to an experimental aircraft group up toward Cleveland, and I never saw it again.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You have not seen it since then?
Well, I've only got the tape.
You got the tape.
I need that copy back so I can make a good video from it.
What about the other films that you produced?
Wednesday Children. Was
That's
a
the one
big-
that I saw
I thought
time and
you
again.
might,
Oh,
yeah.
my heavens, what a beautifully
Yeah,
sad
well,
story.
We tried to do what we could and what we had to do with on that one. And
Tell us where you shot that. And
well, we shot at Mark Friedley's place. Interiors.
tell us, for the
exterior,
sake of history, tell us where Mark Friedley's place was
Okay,
at the time.
463 Akron Road.
Which is just almost at the end of Hartman Road, just a little bit east,
Yeah.
and back in near the lake, off the road,
Right.
500 feet off the road.
Yeah, he's back in on the north side of 261.
Right.
And
Very
that's right
picturesque.
behind 469 Akron Road, which is where we live.
Which was where you
so
lived,
it was
right.
very handy. You know, I was aware of it. But anyway, we shot that. Cal Clifford was involved in that.
Cal Clifford is an optometrist,
Right, my old friend.
very good person.
yeah.
Neighbor of mine from years back. His
Yes.
grandparents were neighbors, and Cal unfortunately had
He's the
a
old
muscular disease, but his mind is just as sharp as it comes.
He's
It's
still
wonderful.
so
There was
witty.
never a sharper mind, I don't think.
Just a good
Really,
person.
on everything.
His sister
yeah.
Maxine was my class.
And then we had a young black man from Cleveland who is still a friend of mine. We were talking the other day on the telephone, and he asked me to look over a script that he's trying to get going in Hollywood. Just read it. And so I did, and I told him where I saw some short angles and unexplainable things, because it was fresh in my mind. Anyway, Maurice Newman was his name, and we worked with a Cleveland actress or two, and a local boy,
Do you
and
remember who the local boy was?
Al Miskell.
Al Miskell.
no, I'm talking about the lead,
Oh, Kelly.
Tom Kelly.
Tom Kelly.
Yeah.
And how does Tom Kelly fit into Wadsworth? The Wadsworth family?
His dad, Doug Kelly, is a realtor in Wadsworth.
Yeah.
I want to make sure because a lot of Kellys.
Yeah, well, they live up on Woodland or Highland, up heights there. But anyway, what we had was an exercise against, we couldn't get the thing distributed. Okay, it was shot in 16, and we got the Strand Theater down here. Gary Greavy gave us the Strand Theater for a week, and we got 16 millimeter arc projectors, rented them, and ran it down just like you do. We had two of them. When one came to the end, clicked the other one on, and ran it there for a week it was.
The most important person in there was Bob West, the minister of Universal
gosh,
Church
how could I
in
forget
Westville
that?
Center.
It was Bob's idea, his story, everything.
What was the story about, for the
Well,
sake of history?
The Wednesday Children. Wednesday's child is full of grief or
Woe.
something.
Wednesday's
Woe,
child.
full of woe.
Okay. Anyway, this is about a young fella who was growing up, and we showed a kind of a sensitive, hostile environment in the family around the dinner table, things that you normally take care of, and he gets hooked up with a janitor in the church, and the consequences are that he gets the power.
The janitor's kind of an embodied devil
Yeah.
character.
So this kid gets the power, and he starts getting all the other kids together, and they really raise hell with the population as far as we could go without getting into great, horrible special effects.
Guess where the kids came from?
Just out of curiosity, where did the
Isham
kids come
School.
from? Isham
Yeah.
School. And there were many of them, too.
Many,
yeah,
many.
we-
We treated them to ice cream and candy and pop
Yeah.
and such things, and
That's what they will remember, the fact
They
that
will
they got some
remember.
ice cream and pop from Mrs.
Well,
Baldwin.
they had a good time too, because it was the end shot with the titles flicked over, and a long shot across the lake on the Friedley house, and all these kids having a ball. Cut away to close-ups and what have you. It was a neat way to wrap it up.
How many other films did you make, Tom? Tom, that's your brother Tom, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Homer.
I probably have made 20 films, at least for business and industry. But you wouldn't believe what I ran into there. That's a story in itself. It really is. I'll tell you about it when we're off camera. It's kind of interesting. And as far as I know, at the present time, I counted the other day, I'm on documentary 61 in the last 15 years we're up here.
61.
Yeah, 61.
That's a lot of
But
documentaries.
all different kinds.
And you're
Matter
talking
of
about
fact-
hours.
Well, yeah, I'm putting them in the library. If
Tell us the
anybody sees a thing called a passing parade, each tape runs for 2 hours. I've got 4 of them up here now, and I'm working on number 5. But they are a variety. And at the end of each one, it said, these productions may also be gotten at the Wadsworth Public Library, because I have given them good copies down there for theirs. And it covers things you wouldn't believe.
The Historical Society is giving all of the tapes that we do for
Oh, I was
people like
hoping
you,
they would.
to
Yes.
the library. As a matter of fact, the first 38 were given just recently to the library, and the remaining ones will be as well. Homer, you did a documentary, and typically we don't like to identify dates on camera because this can be shown 2 years from now and we won't know, but since this is a historical kind of thing, we are probably a month away from a tornado that came through Wadsworth. What was the first thing that you thought of after the safety of everybody? What was the first thing that you thought that needed to be done, and what did you do and how did you do it?
Well, I was out of town when it hit. I was up in the Stowe area, and I didn't know anything about it. Our woods, we live in a 2.3 acre woods, nothing was touched. A few sticks down, not at all. Went down River Styx Valley and saw whole trees cut in half and falling over, but it didn't touch us. So I really didn't know anything about the tornado until Monday. It hit them on Saturday.
The tornado was on the 16th of August,
Okay,
Right,
on
1997.
Saturday. We were at Clambake up in Stowe in there. So Chuck Parsons' secretary, Mrs. Johnson, called me about 10:40 Monday morning and said Chuck would like to see me about 8:30 that night at my house about the big storm that blew off the roof at Central. I said, what? Strike me pink. Blew it off, eh? So anyway, Chuck came around and we had 4 days to shoot something and put it together. And that's the kind of thing I like to do.
And what did you call it?
It's not impossible.
What did you call the film?
Well,
Dire adversity.
Dire Adversity.
yeah.
And it has been shown time and time again, and I've watched it. Every time it's shown, I watch it. Not that I'm a gory person, but the fact is that a short 5 years ago, on the same identical day, we had a tornado that came through Wadsworth. And I know that
the same identical day?
The same identical day. However, it was on the 17th of August
Yes,
instead of the
sure.
16th, but it was on the Saturday.
day.
Saturday.
I taped it.
You taped it.
In the library thing, in Passing Parade, I think it's volume 3, is called The Night the Sky Came Down.
That's right.
And that's it. I followed it from Memorial Park all the way through here to Gordon Avenue.
5 years to the day,
Jeez.
you made a second one. Now, the reason I know that is that our son got married that day, and we had a reception out at the, Medina, what is it, the Williams on the Lake.
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
5 weeks prior to the wedding, we had such a horrible drought that everything was brown. Absolutely everything was
Oh,
brown.
how coincidental.
We went out there, and as the wedding, it was the afternoon wedding reception, a short, little small reception, we saw the sky blackening in the west. And we were all kind of pleased because we hadn't had a drop of rain. We had lost trees, we had lost a lot
I
of things.
remember I carried buckets of water that year.
Yes, buckets and tons of, I had just planted some 60 pine trees. And I spent my entire day watering, and I had thousands of gallons of water, and it was hard to get even. So that storm came west, and it went over Williams on the Lake. We had a little bit of a sprinkle. We came back into Wadsworth, and we were stopped at the square because we couldn't get through. The trees were absolutely everywhere. You saw it. Came right up Cottage Street.
Yeah.
And we had some plants, some ferns that we were going to return to the church. We couldn't get to the church. It was that bad.
Oh, sure, there were trees down.
5 years to the day, we had the exact same thing. It came up the same street, as it were, and came over the high school. Now, the first one, we were just building a house at the time. The first one, 5 years ago, did a number on our house. The one that came on the 16th of August, came all the way through, our house is immediately east of the high school, only 2 miles east of it, or the central school, and it made a path through there and just decimated the whole place. Came to our lawn, went all the way around the house, and went to the woods behind and ripped 6 big trees out.
Oh boy.
So when I saw that film, I thought to myself, this is eerie.
Yeah.
That to see that this documentary. But you made the first documentary. You made the second documentary. Yeah. Now, if you live to be 5 more years, and we hope and pray that you live more, let's
Looking
watch
for a
that.
drought and another one.
I'll be out there with my camera ready to crank and say, "Come on, buddy, come on."
We want to hear a really quick one here as we come to the end of our hour about something that you did, which no one else has done in Wadsworth also, and that is to build a house underground. Tell us about
Well, it isn't underground, it's into the ground.
It's called a berm house.
Yes.
Berm house.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not underground, it's into the
right
ground.
into the berm.
Right.
Tell us why you did it, how you did it, and what you did to make it the way it is.
Tell them, love.
It's a beautiful home.
It is gorgeous.
Homer designed it in art school, many, many, many years ago. And then we had Myers Associates polish it up and make it a real...
He was the architect.
He was the
He
architect.
added a lot of nice things.
And so he took out the bad things and put in the good things and so on. And then we walked the land with him, and we positioned it so that it would look perfect where it was. And we've lived in it, and it's been absolutely perfect.
Tell us, describe it. It's into the ground, right?
It's L-shaped in the
L-shaped.
where the creek bends. Creek 10 feet long.
Give us 3 or 4 little items about it, such as heat.
The heat is easy to heat because there's no wind.
There's no wind.
No wind.
And
it blows right over the top of the house.
Right.
Right.
And
the ground temperature is 90 days behind air temperature. So right now, in that house, in September, we've got the heat of June.
And then,
actually in the earth.
In December, you will have the heat of September.
Right. It
And
just
then
starts going the other way.
when springtime comes, you'll be nice and cool. That's wonderful.
It worked.
Where'd you get the thought, Homer?
It was a class assignment. Design the kind of a house you'd like to live in.
Where? I mean, when did you
This
do
was
that?
at Akron Art Institute.
Many years ago,
Oh, let's see, I was
1950.
about
1950.
Yeah.
When did you build it?
We built it we moved into it in 1979 in the
So
spring.
29 years later, you did it.
Yeah.
Tell us where it is, so for the sake of history. It's on Blake Road.
Yeah, it's on Blake
Just
Road.
west of,
Well, it's east of Route 57, where Blake crosses 57. If you're going up 57, you hang a right and come up the hill, right at the top of the hill. And there is a woods on the right-hand side as you're heading east up Blake Road, about 500 feet above Route 57. And by golly, there we are.
there you are. One of the last things I need to ask you, we have only about a minute left here. One of the last things that I wanted to ask you has something to do with the two of you. You went to Wadsworth High School, you graduated in 1945. You went to Wadsworth High School, you graduated in 1947.
Right.
You didn't even know each other in high school.
Oh, yes, we
yes.
did.
Oh, you did? Ah, here comes it now.
Doris
How
Baldwin,
did
the art
you-
room brought us together.
Doris Baldwin.
Oh, no, we met in Durling Park.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's-
Let's hear the truth now.
Okay.
How did you meet?
I used to go down there and play. I lived on Crestwood Avenue. And he'd follow me around until I got so tired of him doing it, I'd run and hide.
Then what?
I'd seek
Oh, he
her
was
out.
persistent.
And he finally,
He finally convinced me to go out with him about 4 years later.
4 years later.
And I did.
But you were not going with him in high school.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you were going with him
Yeah,
in high
this
school?
was high school.
Oh, this was
15 years old.
She was 15 years old, and you were 17 years old at the time. And you were persistent, and you finally got her to say yes. And when were you married?
We were married in 1949, March 5th.
March 5th. And here in Wadsworth?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
And
The
which-
old Methodist church.
The
that
old
they turned
Methodist
into
church.
school.
Where the school is, where the
Right,
school
where
parking lot.
there's
Yes,
nothing
right
now.
Phyllis, Philly, and Homer Baldwin, we are so genuinely pleased to have this bit of history for Wadsworth for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, you're the only one around who has done what you've done. And probably more important than that, you're the only person in the whole world who was able to get such a unique individual such as Phyllis Robinson Baldwin to be your wife, and we're grateful for that because the progeny is outstanding as well.
Hallelujah, brother.
Hallelujah, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And we're so genuinely pleased to have had you today.
Thank you.